Imagine a city of 1 million people and not a single street light anywhere in it. No electric glow on the horizon. No headlights sweeping across the walls. No hum of traffic. No buzzing phone. No glass in the windows to keep the night out. Just a vast dark city of stone and brick and timber, settling into the deepest quiet it will know all day, lit only by the moon and the stars, and here and there the small wavering flame of an oil lamp behind a shutter. This is Rome, almost 2,000 years ago. And tonight you are here. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to remember anything or follow anything closely. You are simply going to drift through this ancient city as it goes to sleep, the way you are going to sleep, slowly, gently, letting the day fall away behind you. There is nothing here that can reach you, nothing that needs you. You are a quiet, unseen traveler, moving softly through the streets of the greatest city of the ancient world on an ordinary evening when the work is done and the light is fading and 1 million people are settling down to rest. So let yourself get comfortable. Let your shoulders drop and your jaw loosen and your breath slow down, in and out, soft and easy. And let's walk into the evening together. The sun is going down over the 7 hills. You're standing at the edge of the city, where the buildings thin out into gardens and tombs along the old roads, and from here you can see all of Rome laid out before you in the last of the light. It is bigger than you might expect, far bigger. By the height of the empire, somewhere around 1 million people lived packed inside these walls, which made Rome the largest city the world had ever seen, and one that no European city would match again for more than 1,000 years afterward. 1 million people in a space you could walk across in an afternoon. It's hard to imagine. So just let the picture sit there, soft and golden, the rooftops going on and on toward the river, the temples standing up pale against the darkening sky. The light is the color of warm honey now, and it's catching on the marble of the great public buildings, the temples and the basilicas and the theaters, turning them gold. But most of Rome is not marble. That's the part the movies tend to leave out. For every gleaming temple, there were thousands of ordinary buildings made of brick and concrete and timber, plastered and painted in faded reds and ochres and yellows, crowded close together along narrow, winding streets. The marble was the jewelry. The brick was the body. And tonight, as the sun sinks, all of it together is glowing in the same soft amber light, the grand and the humble alike, the whole vast city breathing out the heat of the day. You can smell the evening rising up to meet you. Wood smoke first of all, thin and grey and everywhere, drifting up from countless small fires as the city begins to cook its evening meal. And underneath the smoke, the smell of bread. Rome ran on bread, and its bakeries worked through much of the night, so that there was almost always, somewhere close by, the warm yeasted smell of dough and baking crust threading through the streets. There's the green smell of herbs and the sharp tang of fish sauce that the Romans put on nearly everything, and the dusty smell of dry stone giving up the last of the day's warmth. Breathe it in. Let it settle. Somewhere out across the rooftops, a temple bell sounds just once, low and round, and the note hangs in the cooling air and slowly fades. The day is ending. And all across the city, in 10,000 homes, people are doing the same small, quiet things that people have always done at the end of the day. Washing the dust from their hands and feet, lighting the lamps, setting out the evening meal, calling the children in from the streets. The great roar of the daytime city, the carts and the crowds and the shouting merchants, is softening now into something gentler, a low murmur of voices and footsteps and closing doors, the sound of 1 million people letting the day go. And here's something you might not expect. For most of those people, This quiet evening hour was one of the few they had. Rome was loud. Rome was crowded. By day, it was one of the most crowded places that has ever existed, and there's a reason we still have the words of Romans complaining about it. One famous writer, a poet named Juvenal, grumbled that it was impossible to sleep in the city for all the noise, the wagons rattling through the narrow streets, the drovers shouting, the endless din. Because the streets were so packed by day, the Emperor Julius Caesar had actually banned most wheeled carts from the city during daylight hours, which meant that all the heavy hauling, all the wagons loaded with grain and stone and timber, had to move at night. So even now, as the city goes quiet, somewhere in the dark there are creaking carts and plodding oxen moving slowly through the empty streets under the stars. But they are far away, and you don't have to listen. You can let that distant creak and rumble become just another soft layer of the night, like waves, or rain, or wind in the trees. If you're listening to this to help you fall asleep, then you're already doing exactly what this is for. There's nothing more to do. But if you'd like to, you could let me know down in the comments where you are right now and what time it is where you're listening. I always find it strange and lovely to think about. Someone in a quiet apartment in Tokyo as the sun comes up. Someone in London with the rain on the window. Someone in California long past midnight, the house dark and still. All of us drifting off together tonight into the same old streets of Rome. So if you think of it, say hello. And then let yourself sink back down and we'll keep walking. The last of the sun is leaving the hilltops now. The gold is fading to grey, and the grey is deepening to blue, and the first stars are beginning to show in the wide, darkening sky above the city. And as the daylight withdraws, the small flames begin to answer it. One by one, all across Rome, the lamps are being lit. A glow appears behind a shutter here, a torch flares to life in a doorway there. And slowly, gently, the dark city fills with 1,000 small points of warm and wavering light, scattered across the hills and the hollows like embers, like fireflies, like stars come down to rest among the rooftops. You watch them appear, you're in no hurry. And when you're ready, you let yourself drift down from the high ground, down toward those warm, scattered lights, into the narrow streets of the waking night, where the lamps are glowing, and the bakers are at their ovens, and the great city of Rome is settling slowly all around you into its deep and ancient sleep. You're walking now along a narrow street, and the night has truly come. Above you, the strip of sky between the rooftops has gone deep blue, almost black, and the first thing you notice is how dark it is down here at street level. There is no lighting in the public streets of Rome, none at all. The idea simply doesn't exist yet. When the sun goes down, the city goes dark, and people stay home, or they bring their own light, or they hire a torchbearer to walk ahead of them through the black. For most ordinary Romans, the night was something you spent indoors. The streets after dark belonged to the carts and the watchmen and the occasional knot of revelers stumbling home from a long dinner with a slave carrying a lamp before them. So the darkness here is soft and complete, the kind we almost never feel anymore, and your eyes slowly adjust to it the way they were always meant to. And in that darkness, the small lights matter all the more. A lamp glows gold behind a latticed shutter overhead. A torch gutters in an iron bracket beside a doorway, throwing its warm and restless light across the rough stone of the wall, making the shadows lean and sway. Up ahead, a faint flickering glow spills out from the open front of a little shop. A thermopolium, the Roman version of a fast food counter, where you could buy hot food and watered wine from great clay jars set into a stone bench. A few of these stayed open into the evening, their counters lit by oil lamps, and you can see the soft light pooling out onto the street and smell the lentils and the sausage and the warm spiced wine. The lamps themselves are small things, most of them made of clay no bigger than the palm of your hand. You fill them with olive oil, you lay a twist of linen or papyrus in the spout for a wick, and you light it, and it gives you a small steady flame, soft and yellow, that will burn for hours. The wealthy had lamps of bronze, beautiful ones, shaped like animals or gods or ships, and they had them by the dozen, whole branching lampstands of them filling a room with golden light. But for most people, one little clay lamp was the difference between the evening and the dark, and its small flame was carried carefully from room to room, set by the bed, set by the table, guarded against the draught. There is something deeply peaceful in that when you let yourself feel it. A whole civilization, at the height of its power, settling down each night by the light of 100,000 tiny flames. You move on slowly, and your feet find the great paving stones of the street, worn smooth and slightly uneven, cool now in the evening air. These streets were built to last, and many of them have lasted, the same basalt stones polished by centuries of feet and wheels. In the daytime, they were rivers of people. Now they are nearly empty, and you have them almost to yourself, stretching away ahead of you into the soft dark, lit here and there by a doorway lamp, curving gently between the tall dark walls of the buildings. And those buildings rise up surprisingly high on either side of you. This is something else the movies rarely show. Most Romans did not live in pretty villas with courtyards and gardens. Most Romans lived stacked on top of one another in apartment blocks called insulae, which could rise 5, 6, even 7 or more stories into the sky, the tallest buildings in the ancient world. They leaned close over the narrow streets, sometimes so close that neighbors could almost reach across and touch hands from their upper windows, and they blocked out the sun by day and the stars by night, so that walking these streets felt a little like walking at the bottom of a deep stone canyon. Some of them had balconies. Many had little window boxes of flowers and herbs, and in the evening you could look up and see them dotted with the warm glow of lamplight, floor above floor above floor, each small light a family, a household, a life, settling into the night. The air down here is cooler than up on the hilltops and a little damp, and it carries the mingled smells of the crowded city. Smoke and cooking and stone, yes, but other things too, the realities of a place where 1 million people lived without modern plumbing. The Romans were better at sanitation than almost anyone before the modern age. They had public latrines and a great network of sewers, the famous Cloaca Maxima, carrying waste down to the river. But it was still a crowded ancient city, and it still had its smells, and the people who lived there simply didn't notice them the way we would, the way you stop noticing any smell you live with long enough. So let that go too. Let the street just be the street, dim and cool and quiet, the lamps glowing softly overhead. Somewhere above you, a shutter opens, and a woman's voice calls out something soft to someone inside, and a child answers, and the shutter closes again. A dog barks once, far off, and then thinks better of it. From an open window comes the faint clink of pottery and the low rise and fall of a family talking over their evening meal. These are the sounds of the city going to sleep, the small domestic sounds that have been the same in every city in every age, the sounds of people safe inside, with the door shut and the lamp lit and the day behind them. You drift on, deeper into the quiet streets, past a public fountain where water spills endlessly from a worn stone spout into a basin, catching the lamplight in little broken gleams. past a shrine set into a wall at a crossroads, a small niche with a painted figure of a household god and a tiny lamp burning before it, left by the neighborhood to watch over the corner through the night. Past a wine shop closing its shutters, and a baker's doorway breathing out its warmth, and a long blank wall scrawled with the graffiti that Romans left everywhere, election slogans and rude jokes and lovers' names, faded now and barely visible in the dark. And with every slow step, you can feel the city growing quieter around you, and your own thoughts growing quieter too, slowing and softening, settling like the dust settling in the cooling air. There is nowhere you need to be. There is nothing you need to do. There is only this dim and peaceful street, the small warm lamps glowing overhead, the endless gentle murmur of the fountain, and the great old city of Rome breathing slowly all around you in the dark, drawing you on, deeper and deeper, into the quiet of the night. Let's step closer now to one of those tall apartment buildings, one of the insulae, and imagine the life going on inside it, floor by floor, as the night settles in. Because if you had really lived in ancient Rome, the odds are overwhelming that this is where you would have spent your nights. Not in a marble palace. Here, in a rented room, somewhere up one of these dark stairwells, among hundreds of thousands of ordinary people living their ordinary lives. The building rises up before you, 6 stories of brick and concrete, its lower front taken up by shops that have closed their shutters for the night. And here is something that might surprise you, something that turns our whole idea of rich and poor upside down. In a Roman apartment block, the most desirable place to live was the bottom. The ground floor and the first floor up were the good apartments, spacious and solid, sometimes very fine indeed, with proper walls and floors, and sometimes even running water piped in from the street. These were for the people who could afford them, and the higher you climbed, the worse it got, and the cheaper it got, and the poorer the people became. The wealthy lived low, close to the street, close to the water, with the shortest distance to flee in case of fire. The poor lived high, up endless flights of dark and narrow stairs, in small cramped rooms under the roof. So let's climb. Up the dark stairwell, lit by a single small lamp on a landing, the steps worn and a little crooked, the air growing warmer and closer as you rise. On the lower floors, behind solid doors, are the comfortable apartments, and through one half-open doorway you catch a glimpse of a proper room, a mosaic floor, walls painted with garden scenes and little floating figures, a family reclining at their evening meal in the lamplight, unhurried, at ease. This was a good life, not the life of the senators up on the Palatine, but a solid, respectable, comfortable Roman life, and there were a great many people living it. Keep climbing, and the building changes around you. The stairs grow narrower, the landings grow darker. The doors grow plainer and closer together, because the rooms behind them are smaller, divided and subdivided to fit more people in. Up here, near the top, whole families might live in a single rented room, sleeping together on simple beds and mats, cooking on a little portable brazier of hot coals, which was dangerous because these upper floors were built lightly of timber and mud brick, and fire was the great terror of the Roman night. The city burned, again and again, all through its history. There were no good ways to fight a fire in a 6-story timber building, and the people at the top knew it and lived with it, the way people everywhere learn to live with the dangers they cannot change. But don't let that worry trouble you tonight. Tonight there is no fire, only the warm, small flame of the lamp and the family settling down to sleep. Listen. Through the thin walls and the open windows, you can hear the whole building breathing around you. A baby fussing somewhere below, and a mother's low voice soothing it, the oldest sound in the world. An old man coughing, a couple talking softly, someone singing under their breath as they bank the coals for the night. The creak of a bed, the scrape of a stool, the soft sounds of many lives pressed close together, each one small and quiet, all of them together making the low, warm hum of a city asleep. And from the little window of the topmost room, if you lean out, you can see something the people on the ground floor never saw. You can see over the rooftops. From up here, high above the dark canyons of the streets, all of Rome is spread out below you under the stars, a vast dark sea of tile and timber rolling away toward the hills, dotted everywhere with the small gold lights of 100,000 lamps. The cool night air moves across your face. Far off, a temple stands pale on its hilltop in the moonlight. The river is a faint silver thread winding through the dark. And over it all is the immense quiet of the ancient night, deeper and more complete than any quiet we know, a darkness without engines, without electricity, without any light but fire and moon and stars. The people who lived up here were poor by the measure of their own city. They worked hard for small wages, and they worried about the rent, and they crowded into their little rooms. But they were Romans, citizens of the greatest city on earth, and their days were not all hardship. There were holidays, and there were a great many of them, more than 100 days a year by some counts, when the law courts were closed and no business was done. There were the free games at the great arenas, and the free grain that the state handed out to the citizens, the famous grain dole that fed the poor of Rome. There were the public baths, which anyone could enter for the smallest coin, and which we'll come to soon. There were friends and family, and the long warm evenings of an Italian summer, and the small pleasures of food and wine and talk. It was a hard life in many ways, and a rich one in others, the way most human lives have always been. Now the lamp in the little room is burning low. The family has settled onto their beds and mats, drawn close together in the warm dark. The mother lays the baby down at last, and it sleeps. The old man's cough has quieted. Outside the window, the city murmurs and glows. And one by one, all through the great tall building, the small lamps are being pinched out, and the rooms are going dark, floor by floor, family by family, as Rome lets go of another day. You let yourself drift back down the dark stairwell, light as a breath, out through the silent shops and into the cool of the street again. And you carry with you the warmth of that crowded sleeping building, all those lives layered one above another in the dark, all of them settling, all of them quieting, all of them sinking down towards sleep, exactly as you are sinking now, slow and soft and unafraid, into the deep and gentle quiet of the Roman night. Let's go back down to the comfortable apartments on the lower floors for a little while, and to the fine houses tucked here and there among the streets, because the evening meal, the cena, was the heart of the Roman day, and it's worth lingering over slowly, the way the Romans themselves did. For those who could afford it, dinner was not something you rushed through. It was the long, warm, unhurried center of the evening, and drifting through its quiet pleasures is a fine and gentle way to let the night settle deeper around you. A Roman day was arranged quite differently from ours. People rose early, often before dawn, and did most of their serious work in the cool of the morning. By the early afternoon, the working day was largely done, and the late afternoon and evening belonged to leisure, to the baths, and to dinner, which began in the middle of the afternoon by our reckoning and could stretch on for hours into the night. So as you move through these lamplit rooms, you are moving through the most pleasant hours of the Roman day, the hours people looked forward to, the hours when the work was finished, and there was nothing left to do but rest and eat and talk. In a well-off household, the family did not sit at the table to eat. They reclined. This is one of those small details that tells you how different their world was from ours. The dining room, the triclinium, was arranged around three broad couches set in a U-shape, and the diners lay propped on their left elbows, on cushions, their feet stretched out behind them, eating with their right hand from low tables set in the middle. To eat lying down was the mark of a free and civilized person at ease. You settled onto the soft couch, you propped yourself among the cushions, and you let the evening unfold slowly, course after course, in the soft light of the lamps. And what did they eat? Not at all what the movies suggest. There were no tomatoes in ancient Rome, no potatoes, no pasta as we know it, none of the things we now think of as Italian, because those foods came from the Americas more than 1,000 years in the future. The Roman table was something else entirely. It began with the gustatio, the appetizers, light things to wake up the palate. Eggs almost always, so reliably that the Romans had a phrase, ab ovo usque ad mala, from the egg to the apples, meaning from the beginning to the end, from the start of dinner to its finish. Olives, of course, glistening and salty. Salad greens dressed with oil. Little salt fish and shellfish and soft cheeses and snails fattened on milk. Then came the main courses, brought in slowly, one after another. For the wealthy this could be an extravagant parade, roast pork and kid and lamb, poultry of every kind, fish from the sea kept fresh in special tanks, songbirds and hare and venison, all of it richly spiced and sauced. But for ordinary people, the daily meal was simpler and, to our eyes, rather healthy. The foundation of the Roman diet was grain, eaten as bread, and as a thick porridge of wheat called pulse, which was the everyday food of the poor for centuries. Around it went vegetables, beans and lentils and chickpeas, cabbage and leeks and onions and olives and cheese and fruit, and only a little meat on special days. Most Romans ate well enough, plainly, off the great abundance of the Mediterranean. And over almost everything went garum. This was the great Roman sauce, the flavor that defined their cooking, a salty, savory, fermented fish sauce that they poured on meat and fish and vegetables and even mixed into sweet dishes. It was made by layering fish and salt and letting them ferment in the sun for weeks, and the smell of it being made was apparently so strong that the workshops were banished to the edges of towns. But the sauce itself, strained clear, was prized above almost anything, traded across the whole empire, and present at nearly every Roman meal. If you could smell the dinners cooking in these houses, garum would be threaded all through them, salty and deep, the taste of Rome itself. To drink, there was wine, but almost never on its own. The Romans thought drinking undiluted wine was the mark of a barbarian or a drunkard. They mixed it with water, sometimes a great deal of water, and warmed it, and spiced it with honey and herbs, and sipped it slowly through the long evening. The very sweet wine of the appetizer course, the mulsum, was mixed with honey. And the talk flowed with the wine, slow and easy, the news of the city, the gossip of the neighborhood, lines of poetry, old stories told again, the comfortable conversation of people with a full table and a warm room and a whole quiet evening ahead of them. So picture it. The lamps are lit and golden. The diners lie at ease among the cushions, their sandals slipped off, the cool of the evening drifting in from the courtyard. A slave moves quietly around the room, refilling the cups, bringing in the next small dish, trimming the lamps. There is the soft clink of pottery, the low murmur of voices, a ripple of quiet laughter. Somewhere a fountain trickles in the dark courtyard beyond. The food comes slowly, and there is no hurry at all, no clock to watch, nowhere else to be, only the long, sweet unwinding of the Roman evening, course after course, cup after cup, the day's work finished and forgotten, the night soft and warm all around. This was the hour the Romans loved best, and it is a fine hour to grow drowsy in. Let yourself sink into the warmth of it, the full table, the soft couch, the golden light, the murmur of contented voices, the long, slow ease of a good dinner among friends with nowhere to go and nothing to do. Feel how heavy and comfortable the body becomes when it is fed and warm and at rest. The Romans understood this. They built their whole evening around it, this slow and pleasant sinking towards sleep. And you can let yourself sink with them now, down into the soft cushions of the night, as the lamps burn low and the last cups are emptied, and the great city outside grows quieter and quieter and quieter still. Let's wander now toward the heart of the city, toward the Forum, the great open square that was the very center of Rome, and indeed the center of the whole Roman world. By day it was the busiest place in the city, perhaps the busiest place on earth, but now, in the deep of the evening, it lies almost empty under the stars, and that emptiness has a grandeur to it, a vast and peaceful stillness that is one of the loveliest things you can imagine on a quiet night. You come down out of the narrow streets, and suddenly the buildings fall away on either side, and the sky opens up above you, wide and dark and full of stars, and you are standing at the edge of the Roman Forum. Take a moment. Let your eyes travel slowly across it. All around the open space rise the great public buildings of Rome, pale and immense in the moonlight. The temples on their high platforms, their rows of columns standing like silent sentinels. The basilicas, the huge roofed halls where the law courts met and business was done. The speaker's platform, the rostra, decorated with the bronze rams of captured warships, where the great orators had spoken to the crowds. The triumphal arches, the honorary columns, the gilded statues of emperors and gods, all of it standing quiet now, washed in silver light, empty of the crowds that filled it all day long. By daylight, this place roared. Imagine it. Lawyers arguing their cases, money changers at their tables, merchants and bankers doing deals, politicians making speeches, crowds gathering to hear the news, religious processions winding through, the whole business of an empire transacted in this one crowded square. The noise of it must have been tremendous, and the Romans came here for all of it, to do business, to hear the gossip, to see and be seen, to take part in the great public life of the city. The Forum was Rome's living room, its marketplace, its courthouse, its temple, and its stage all at once. But now it is night, and all of that has drained away into the dark, and what remains is the pure shape of the place, its bones, its silence. The marble that blazed white at noon glows soft and grey under the moon. The long shadows of the columns lie across the worn paving stones. A breath of wind moves through the open space, and somewhere a loose shutter taps, and a night bird calls from the roof of a temple, and otherwise there is only the great quiet, the deep-settled stillness of the emptied heart of Rome. Here and there a lamp burns. A temple keeps a small flame going through the night before the statue of its god. A watchman's torch moves slowly along a colonnade. The eternal fire of the goddess Vesta glows in its round temple nearby, tended without ceasing by her priestesses, the Vestal virgins, who kept that sacred flame alive day and night, year after year, because the Romans believed that as long as it burned, Rome itself would endure. So even now, in the deepest quiet, there are small fires kept faithfully alight across the Forum, points of warmth and watchfulness in the vast cool dark. Walk slowly across the open stones, worn smooth by uncountable feet. You are treading the very center of the ancient world, the place from which roads ran out to the edges of the known earth, the place the Romans measured all distances from, the golden milestone that marked the heart of the empire. Generals had ridden through here in triumph, with their armies and their captives and their plunder, while all of Rome cheered. Emperors had been carried through here to their funerals. The bodies of the great had lain in state here, and the crowds had wept. Every stone has its memory, every shadow its ghost, and yet none of it weighs on you now. It has all settled into the calm of history, into the deep peace of things long finished, and you move through it lightly, a quiet traveler under the stars, touched by its grandeur, but troubled by nothing. Look up at one of the great temples, its columns rising into the dark, its triangular pediment carved with gods and heroes, just visible in the faint light. These buildings were painted, once, in bright colors that would surprise us, reds and blues and golds, though by night you would never know it, and the marble seems to hold the moonlight and give it back, pale and serene. Inside, in the deep shadow, the great statue of the god stands in the dark, watched over by its single flame. The Romans built these temples not as places of congregation, the way we think of a church, but as houses for the gods, beautiful dwellings where the divine could live among them. And so each one is a kind of sleeping house tonight, with its god at rest inside, and its lamp burning low, and the stars wheeling slowly overhead. A fountain plays softly somewhere at the edge of the square, the endless gentle music of running water that follows you everywhere in this city. The air is cool and clean here in the open, and smells of stone and night and the faint green breath of the gardens on the surrounding hills. You can see the dark mass of the Palatine rising on one side, crowned with the palaces of the emperors, a few lights still glowing among its heights. And on the other side rises the Capitoline, the sacred hill, with the great temple of Jupiter at its summit, the holiest place in Rome, its bulk just visible against the star-strewn sky. Stand here a while, in the middle of the silent forum, and let the vastness of it hold you gently. All the noise and struggle of the day has gone. All the ambition, all the argument, all the endless human striving that filled this square from dawn to dusk has quieted into nothing, into peace, into the soft, enormous silence of the night. The stars turn slowly overhead. The small flames burn faithfully in the temples. The fountain murmurs, and the great old forum, the beating heart of Rome, lies still and calm and empty under the moon, resting as you are resting, sinking deeper as you are sinking into the long, sweet quiet of the night. When you are ready, in no hurry at all, you turn and drift away from the open square, back toward the warmth of the streets, where the lamps are glowing and the city is sleeping, and there are still gentle places to wander before the dawn. Now let's go somewhere warm. Let's go to the baths, because no place tells you more about how the Romans actually lived than the great public bathhouses, and few places in the city were more soothing, more luxurious, or more beloved by ordinary people. By this hour the baths are closing or closed, but the warmth still lingers in their stones, and the memory of the afternoon still hangs in the steam, and it is a deeply restful thing to wander through them slowly as the day winds down. Going to the baths was not a luxury reserved for the rich. It was something nearly everyone did, nearly every day. For the smallest of coins, or sometimes for nothing at all on public holidays, any Roman could spend the afternoon in surroundings of marble and mosaic and warm water that would put a fine modern spa to shame. There were hundreds of bathhouses scattered across the city, from small neighborhood ones to the vast imperial baths, the thermae, which were among the largest and grandest buildings Rome ever produced, covering acres of ground, roofed with soaring vaults of concrete, decorated with colored marble and statues and painted ceilings, and able to hold thousands of bathers at once. The baths were far more than a place to get clean. They were where Rome relaxed. People came in the afternoon when the work was done, and they stayed for hours. They exercised first in the open courtyard, the palestra, throwing a ball, lifting weights, wrestling, or simply walking and talking in the sun. Then they bathed, and the bathing was a slow and pleasant ritual, moving from room to room through changing temperatures, the way the whole afternoon moved slowly from work toward rest. Let's walk the path the bathers walked. First, the apoditerium, the changing room, where you left your clothes in a niche in the wall, in the care of a slave or an attendant, and where the sound of voices echoed off the high ceiling. Then into the tepidarium, the warm room, gently heated, where the body began to relax and the muscles to loosen, a place to sit and let the warmth seep in. Then on into the coldarium, the hot room, the heart of the baths, where great basins of hot water steamed, and the heated floor was almost too warm for bare feet, and the air was thick with steam and the smell of perfumed oils. The Romans did not have soap as we know it. Instead, they rubbed their skin with oil and then scraped it off, along with the sweat and dirt, using a curved bronze tool called a strigil. To be oiled and scraped and bathed in hot water and then plunged into cold was the Roman way to be truly clean and truly at ease. And all of this was made possible by one of the great wonders of Roman engineering, the hypocaust, the underfloor heating system that warmed the baths. Beneath the floors, which were raised up on little brick pillars, hot air from great furnaces flowed and circulated, and ran up through hollow spaces in the walls, heating the rooms from below and behind. Slaves tended those furnaces day and night, feeding the fires, hauling the wood, working in the hot dark beneath the beautiful floors, so that the bathers above could lie in warmth and comfort. It is worth a quiet thought for them, those unseen workers in the dark, whose labor made the soft warmth of the baths. So much of Rome's comfort rested on hidden work like that, on the unending effort of the many, so that life could be pleasant for those above. After the hot rooms came the cold plunge, the frigidarium, a shock of cold water to close the pores and wake the skin, often in a great hall with a deep cold pool beneath a soaring vaulted ceiling. And then, clean and tingling and wonderfully relaxed, the bather could simply linger. The great baths had libraries and gardens and rooms for reading and talking. There were vendors selling food and wine and snacks. There were masseurs who would knead the tired body with scented oil. There were people just sitting in the warmth, talking with friends, doing nothing at all. It was leisure in its purest form, hours of warmth and water and ease, available to almost everyone in the middle of the ancient world. Now, in the evening, the great rooms are emptying. The last bathers are drifting home through the cooling streets, their skins still warm, their bodies still loose and heavy with relaxation, exactly the way your body is growing heavy now. The attendants are damping down the furnaces. The water in the great pools lies still, steaming faintly in the lamplight, its surface smooth as dark glass. The high vaulted ceilings disappear into shadow overhead. Steam drifts slowly through the empty halls, curling around the marble columns, softening every edge, and the only sound is the slow drip of water and the deep tick and settle of cooling stone. Wander through these warm and empty halls a while, through the drifting steam and the soft glow of the last lamps, across the smooth marble floors, still warm beneath your feet from the fires below. Feel the heat soaking into you, loosening every muscle, melting away the last of the day's tension. This is what the Romans came here for, this perfect heavy ease, this warm and floating relaxation, and it is exactly the feeling that carries a body gently down towards sleep. Let it carry you now. Let the warmth seep into your shoulders, your back, your legs. Let the steam soften the edges of your thoughts. Let the slow drip of water and the deep quiet of the cooling baths hold you, weightless and warm and utterly at peace, as the great bathhouse settles into the night, and the fires burn low, and the steam drifts, and the warm dark gathers you in. While most of Rome sinks deeper into sleep, there are a few who are only now beginning their work, and it's worth visiting them gently, the quiet keepers of the night, the people who labored in the dark so that the city would wake to bread and water and a measure of safety. There is something soothing in the thought of them, working softly while everyone else sleeps, the way a few warm lights stay on in a house long after the rest have gone dark. Begin with the bakers, because all night long, in hundreds of small bakeries across the city, the work of bread goes on. Rome ran on bread. The grain dole fed the citizens, and bread was the foundation of nearly every meal, and so the bakeries could not rest. Through the small hours, while the streets lay empty, the bakers and their workers were awake in the warm glow of their ovens. And if you drift past one of their doorways now, you can feel the heat spilling out into the cool street and smell the deep, warm, yeasted smell of dough and baking crust that is one of the most comforting smells there is. Step closer and watch, quietly from the doorway. Inside, in the flickering firelight, the great round millstones turn, sometimes driven by a blindfolded donkey plodding patiently in a circle, sometimes by the workers themselves, grinding the wheat into flour. The dough is mixed in great kneading machines and shaped by hand into round loaves, each one scored across the top, so it could be broken into neat wedges. And then the loaves go into the domed brick ovens, the same shape of oven a baker would know today, and the bakers tend the fire and wait, and the smell of baking fills the warm dark room and drifts out into the sleeping street. By dawn, there will be fresh bread for the whole neighborhood, warm and crusty, and the people will wake to it, never knowing or thinking about the long, quiet night of work that made it. So give the bakers a kind thought as you pass, working softly in the firelight while the city sleeps. Then there are the carters, the men with the wagons, moving their slow, heavy loads through the dark. Remember, wheeled traffic was banned from the city by day, so all the great hauling happened at night. And so, all through the small hours, the empty streets that were rivers of people by daylight became the highways of the freight wagons, creaking slowly along under the stars, loaded with grain from the river ports, with marble and timber for the building sites, with wine and oil and all the endless goods that a million people needed every day. The oxen plod, the drivers doze on their benches, letting the animals find the way. The wagons creak and rumble through the dark, far off, a sound that rises and fades like the breathing of the city itself. You can let that distant creak become part of the night's deep music, slow and steady and far away. And then there are the watchmen, the vigiles, Rome's night watch, and in a way its fire brigade. The Emperor Augustus had organized them, 7 cohorts of them, thousands of men, each cohort responsible for patrolling 2 of the cities, 14 districts through the night. Their great fear and their great purpose was fire, the terror of the timber city, and they walked the streets through the dark hours watching for the first glow of flame, carrying water and blankets and hooks and axes, ready to raise the alarm and fight the blaze. But they kept a general watch as well, against burglars and trouble, a reassuring presence moving through the dark. So picture them now, a small group of the watch coming slowly down a lamplit street, the leader carrying a torch that throws its restless light across the walls, their footsteps echoing softly in the quiet. They pause at a crossroads, where a little shrine burns its small flame. They look up at the dark windows, check a door, murmur a few words to one another, and move on, their torchlight sliding away down the street, growing smaller, growing dimmer, until it turns a corner and is gone. And the street is dark and still again, but somehow safer for their having passed. All through the night, they walk the city like this, round and round their districts, watching, so that the sleeping people behind the shuttered windows can sleep a little easier. There is great comfort in that, in the thought of watchful figures moving softly through the dark, keeping the long night safe. These are the quiet keepers of the Roman night, the baker at the warm oven, the carter on the dark road, the watchman with his torch. And there were others too, the slaves trimming the lamps in the great houses, the priestesses tending the eternal flame, the doctor sitting up with a fevered patient, the new mother awake with her child, all the scattered souls who, for one reason or another, kept their small lights burning while the rest of the city slept. The night was never entirely empty. It was held, gently, by these few quiet watchers, the way a house at night is held by the one lamp left burning in the hall. And there is something deeply restful in knowing that you do not have to keep watch. That others are awake, tending the fires, walking the streets, baking the bread, so that you can let go completely and rest, and sink down into sleep with nothing to guard and nothing to do. The bakers are at their ovens. The watchmen are on their rounds. The city is held safe in the dark. And you can let yourself drift now, deeper and deeper, warm and easy and unafraid, while the quiet keepers of Rome work softly on through the night, and the loaves rise, and the torches move, and the slow wagons creak away into the dark, far off and fading and gone. Let's climb now, slowly and softly, up onto the Palatine Hill, the most famous of the 7 hills of Rome, where the emperors built their palaces, and where the very word palace comes from. It rises above the Forum, dark and grand against the stars, crowned with the vast residences of the rulers of the world, and on a quiet night, there are few places more peaceful than its gardens and terraces, looking out over the sleeping city far below. The Palatine was where Rome began. The old stories said that this was the hill where Romulus founded the city, where the she-wolf had suckled the abandoned twins in a cave on its slopes, and the Romans kept what they believed was that very cave and the simple hut of Romulus, preserved with reverence for centuries. So the hill was sacred ground, the cradle of the city, and that is part of why the emperors chose to live there, to wrap themselves in the oldest and deepest of Rome's stories. By the height of the empire, the whole hilltop had become one enormous palace complex, growing grander with each generation of rulers, until it covered the entire hill in a sprawl of courtyards and colonnades, banqueting halls and private temples, libraries and baths and gardens, fountains and reflecting pools, all decorated with the rarest marbles brought from every corner of the empire, purple and green and gold, polished to a glow. There were halls so large, their ceilings seemed to float, designed to overwhelm the visitor, to make an ambassador or a senator feel small before the majesty of the emperor. There were private apartments of great luxury and secret gardens and terraces with views across the whole of Rome. But tonight, all of that magnificence lies quiet. The great audience halls are empty and dark, their marble floors gleaming faintly in the moonlight. The banqueting rooms, where emperors had feasted their guests beneath ceilings that could shower them with rose petals, are still and silent. The courtiers have gone to their beds, The petitioners have all gone home. The business of ruling an empire has paused for the night. Only a few lamps still burn in the windows, and a few guards, the praetorians, stand watch in the shadowed colonnades, and otherwise the great palace sleeps, like everything else, under the wheeling stars. Walk out onto one of the high terraces, into the cool night air, and look out over the city. From up here, the view is immense. All of Rome lies spread below you in the dark, the Forum just beneath with its temples pale in the moonlight, the great curve of the Circus Maximus running away along the foot of the hill, the dense dark sea of rooftops rolling out toward the city walls, and beyond them the open country and the hills, faint and blue under the stars. And everywhere, scattered across that darkness, the small gold points of the lamps, 10,000 of them, 100,000, each one a household at rest. The river winds through it all, a thread of dull silver in the moonlight. A breath of wind moves through the gardens behind you, carrying the scent of cypress and roses and damp earth. The emperors stood where you are standing now and looked out at this same view, the whole of their capital laid out beneath them, glittering quietly in the dark. Some of them loved it, some of them feared it. To rule Rome was to hold the greatest power in the world, and also to live in the greatest danger, for emperors were made and unmade by the army, by the Senate, by their own guards and families, and many of them died violently, here in these very halls. But that is the striving of the daylight world, the endless grasping after power that fills the histories, and tonight it has all gone quiet. The emperor, whoever he is only a sleeping man now, like all the others, his ambitions and his fears set down for a few hours in the merciful dark. There is a lesson in that, soft and consoling, for anyone lying awake at night. That the greatest and the least lie down the same way when the day is done. That the emperor in his marble palace and the poor family in their little room under the roof are both, in the end, just tired human beings, settling into the dark, letting go of the day, sinking down into the same sleep, beneath the same stars. All the differences of the daylight, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the humble, soften and fade in the night, until there is only the quiet and the breathing and the rest. Linger on the high terrace a while in the cool air, among the dark shapes of the cypress trees and the soft sound of the garden fountains. The marble of the balustrade is cool and smooth beneath your hand. The city glimmers below. The stars are very bright up here, away from the lamplit streets, scattered thick across the deep black sky, the same stars the Romans watched and named and wondered at, turning slowly overhead as they have turned through every night that ever was. A nightingale is singing somewhere in the palace gardens, its song rising and falling, liquid and sweet, the loveliest of all the sounds of the Roman night. And the whole vast city sleeps below you, held in the dark, glimmering and quiet. The emperors and the paupers, the bakers and the senators, the soldiers and the children, all of them resting now, all of them let go of the day. You feel your own breath slow and deepen in the cool night air. You feel the weight settle into your body, the lovely heaviness of coming sleep. And when you are ready, you turn from the high terrace and drift softly back down from the palace of the emperors, down toward the gentle lamplit streets, while the nightingale sings on in the dark gardens and the great city dreams below. Have you noticed, all through this quiet walk, the sound of water? It has been with you everywhere, a fountain murmuring at a crossroads, water spilling into a basin, a trickle in a dark courtyard, the soft, endless music of it threading through every street. That sound was one of the great glories of Rome, and it never stopped, day or night, year after year, century after century. So let's follow the water for a while, because few things are more soothing to drift off to than the thought of all that water flowing gently through the sleeping city in the dark. Rome was a city of water, and that was an extraordinary thing in the ancient world. The water came from the hills and mountains far outside the city, sometimes from springs and lakes 50, 60, even 90 miles away, and it was carried all that distance to Rome by the aqueducts, those great channels of stone and concrete that are among the most famous of all Roman achievements. Most of the way the water ran underground, in covered channels, but where the land dipped, the aqueducts rose up on those soaring rows of arches that still march across the Italian countryside today, carrying the water high above the valleys on a gentle, ceaseless, downhill slope, so that it flowed into the city entirely by the pull of gravity, without a single pump, without any power but the patient tilt of the land. By the height of the empire, there were a dozen or more of these great aqueducts feeding the city, pouring in a tremendous quantity of water day and night without ceasing. And the water did not stop when it arrived. It flowed into great holding tanks, and then out through a vast network of pipes, mostly of lead, branching through the city, to the public fountains, to the baths, to the latrines, to the houses of the rich, and to the workshops and the gardens. And because it flowed by gravity and could not easily be turned off, much of it simply ran continuously, pouring out of the fountains all day and all night, the overflow running away down the gutters of the streets, carrying off the dirt, washing the city clean. It was a system of marvelous extravagance, water without end, water as a constant gift, flowing through Rome like blood through a body. So everywhere in the city there were fountains, hundreds of them, at the street corners and in the public squares, great and small, plain stone basins and elaborate carved monuments, all of them spilling their endless water into the night. The public fountains were where ordinary people, who had no water piped into their high apartments, came to fill their jars and buckets, and by day they were busy, gathering places, full of talk and the splash of water. But now, in the dark, they pour on alone, unwatched, the water falling and falling into the basins, catching the moonlight and the lamplight in little broken gleams, murmuring softly to the empty street. Stop a while at one of these fountains, on a quiet corner under the stars. Watch the water spill from the worn stone spout, a smooth and endless ribbon falling into the basin below, where it ripples and turns and overflows and runs away down a channel in the street. Listen to the sound of it, that soft, steady, unhurried trickle and splash, a sound with no beginning and no end, that has been going on all day and will go on all night and will still be going on at dawn. There is something deeply restful in water that simply flows, asking nothing, doing nothing, only falling and falling, soft and patient and endless. Let the sound of it fill your ears. Let it wash gently through your mind, smoothing everything, softening everything, carrying your thoughts away downstream into the dark. And think, if you like, of all the water moving through the sleeping city at this very moment. High in the dark hills, the springs are still feeding the channels. Across the moonlit countryside, the great aqueducts are carrying their silent rivers toward the city on their endless arches. Beneath the streets and through the walls, the water is running in its pipes, branching and flowing, down into the baths where it lies steaming in the great pools, out into the 100 fountains where it spills and sings, through the latrines and the gardens and the courtyards, and away at last into the deep stone tunnel of the great sewer, the Cloaca Maxima, carrying everything down to the river. All of it moving, all of it flowing, gently and ceaselessly, through the dark veins of the sleeping city. And the river itself, the Tiber, winds through the heart of it all, broad and slow and dark, sliding silently past the wharves and under the bridges, on its long way down to the sea. We will come to the river soon. But for now, just rest in the sound of the water, the fountains pouring in the empty streets, the aqueducts flowing through the dark hills, the endless soft music of it moving through Rome. There is a reason the sound of water has soothed human beings in every age. It is one of the oldest sounds of safety, of plenty, of life. And the Romans surrounded themselves with it, filled their city with it, fell asleep to it every night of their lives, the fountain murmuring at the corner, the water running in the dark. Let it carry you now, that same old sound, falling and flowing, soft and endless, washing through the sleeping city and through your own quieting mind, smoothing every thought away, carrying you gently down, like a leaf on slow water, into the deep, calm river of sleep. Let's follow the river down now, down through the southern part of the city to the waterfront, to the wharves and the warehouses along the Tiber, where the goods of the whole world came into Rome. It is one of the quieter corners of the city at night, a place of dark water and looming storehouses and sleeping ships, and there is a deep and gentle peace in it, the peace of a working place at rest, the peace of the harbor in the dark. A city of 1 million people needs an enormous amount of everything every single day, and almost all of it came to Rome by water. The roads were wonderful, the best in the ancient world, but you could not feed 1 million people by cart. The grain that made the bread, the oil and the wine, the marble and the stone, the cloth and the pottery, and the countless goods of a world-spanning empire, nearly all of it came by sea to the great port at the mouth of the Tiber, and then up the river by barge to the wharves of Rome. So the riverfront was one of the busiest places in the city, a long stretch of docks and quays and warehouses, where the barges unloaded and the porters labored, and the goods piled up before going on into the markets and storerooms of the city. The grain especially. Rome's hunger for grain was vast and constant, and feeding the city was one of the great responsibilities of the state, because a hungry Rome was a dangerous Rome. The grain came from Egypt and from North Africa, from the rich farmlands across the sea, brought in great ships to the port and then up the river, and stored in enormous warehouses, the horia, huge solid buildings designed to keep the grain dry and safe and cool. There were warehouses for grain and warehouses for oil and warehouses for wine, whole districts of them, vast and plain and strong, the unglamorous foundations on which the glittering city stood. And there is one place down here worth a quiet moment of wonder. Near the river stands a hill, a strange and gentle hill, grassy and rounded, that the Romans did not build on purpose at all. It is made entirely of broken pottery. For century after century, the great cargoes of olive oil came to Rome in pottery jars, amphorae, and the oil soaked into the clay so that the jars could not be reused or recycled. And so, when they were emptied, they were broken up and carefully stacked here by the river in an orderly heap that grew over the centuries into an actual hill, tens of millions of broken jars, a mountain of discarded pottery that is still there today. Think of that, a hill made of the oil jars of 1,000 years of dinners, of all the oil that fed and lit and anointed the people of Rome, piled up quietly by the river. There is something strangely moving in it, all those countless ordinary jars, all those countless ordinary meals, layered into a green hill in the dark. But now, at night, the busy waterfront is still. The barges lie moored along the quays, dark shapes on the dark water, rocking very gently, their mooring ropes creaking softly. The great warehouses loom in the starlight, their doors shut and barred, a watchman's lamp glowing here and there. The porters have gone home. The The great wooden lifting machines worked by men walking inside a treadwheel stand idle and silent against the sky. And the river slides past it all, broad and slow and black, gleaming faintly where the moonlight catches it, carrying its endless quiet weight of water down toward the distant sea. Stand a while by the dark water and let the peace of the harbor settle over you. The river smells of mud and water and tar and the faint sweetness of spilled wine. A fish jumps somewhere out in the dark, a small splash, and the ripples spread and fade. A moored barge knocks softly against the quay once, twice, and is still. The water laps gently at the stone steps that go down into the river. And far off, downstream, you can just hear the deeper sound of the river running over a shallows, a low and constant murmur, soft as breathing, carrying on through the night. There is something about a harbor at night, a working waterfront come to rest, that soothes the soul as few things can. All the labor of the day is finished. The ships are safely moored. The cargoes are stored away. The water that carried them rocks them gently now, holding them safe in the dark, and there is nothing left to do but rest and wait for the dawn and let the slow river slide past. The sailors sleep in their berths, rocked by the water. The barges doze at their moorings. The whole busy harbor breathes slow and deep, at rest at last. And you can rest with it now, down by the dark and gentle river, where the goods of the world lie sleeping in their warehouses, and the ships lie sleeping at their quays, and the great slow Tiber slides endlessly past in the dark, on its long, patient, unhurried way to the sea. Let the soft knock of the moored boats, and the gentle lap of the water, and the distant murmur of the river over the shallows hold you, and rock you, and carry you down, slow and safe and easy, into the deep, quiet water of sleep. As you drift back up into the heart of the city, let's think for a while about the gods, because the Romans lived in a world that was full of them, far more full than we can easily imagine, and the night especially belonged to the divine. For the Romans, the gods were not far away in some distant heaven. They were everywhere, woven into every moment of the day, present at every crossroads and doorway and hearth, and moving softly through the dark city even now as it slept. Begin with the smallest and most intimate of them, the household gods, the ones who mattered most to ordinary people. Every Roman home had its little shrine, the lararium, a small niche or cupboard, often beautifully painted, where the family kept the images of their protective spirits. There were the lares, the guardians of the household and the family, and the penates, who watched over the storeroom and the food, and the genius, the protecting spirit of the head of the family. Every day the family made small offerings to them, a little food, a few drops of wine, a garland of flowers, a prayer. And every night the small lamp at the shrine was lit, a tiny flame burning before the little figures of the gods watching over the sleeping house. So in 10,000 homes across the city, as the families settled into the dark, these small sacred flames were glowing, the household gods keeping their patient watch over the people they protected. And out in the streets, at the crossroads, were the shrines of the lares Capitoles, the guardians of the neighborhood, where the local people gathered for festivals and left their offerings, small painted niches with a flame kept burning to watch over the corner through the night. You have passed them already on your walk, those little points of light at the dark crossroads, each one a god keeping watch. The Romans believed the night was full of presences, of spirits and powers, and so they liked to keep these small flames burning against the dark, these little outposts of the divine, scattered through the sleeping city. The Romans were, by our standards, deeply superstitious, though to them it was simply common sense, simply the way the world worked. They believed the gods sent signs in the flight of birds, in the entrails of sacrifices, in thunder and lightning and strange occurrences, and they read these signs carefully before any important undertaking. They believed in lucky and unlucky days. They believed in spirits of the dead and held festivals to honor them and to keep them content. They wore charms and amulets against the evil eye and hung little bells and made the small protective gestures that people have always made against the unknown. And at night, when the world was dark and the boundaries between things felt thin, all of this came a little closer, and people were glad of their household gods and their little flames and the comfortable rituals that kept the dark at bay. But there was nothing frightening in it, not really, not on a peaceful night like this. The gods of Rome were mostly close and familiar, woven into the warm fabric of daily life, more like unseen members of the family than distant powers. The goddess of the hearth, Vesta, lived in the fire on which you cooked your food. The god of doorways, Janus, who looked both ways, watched over every coming and going. There were gods of the fields and the woods and the rivers, gods of the boundary stones, gods of the granary and the cradle and the marriage bed. To be a Roman was to move through a world that was alive with the divine, companioned at every step, never quite alone. And high above the city, on the great temples, the major gods kept their own kind of watch. In the temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline, the greatest god of Rome sat in the dark in his great statue, his single lamp burning before him, the protector of the whole Roman state. In 100 other temples across the city, the gods rested in their beautiful houses, Juno and Minerva, Venus and Mars, Apollo and Diana, each in their own sanctuary, each watched over by a faithful flame. And in the temple of Vesta in the Forum, the sacred eternal fire burned on, tended without ceasing by the Vestal virgins, the flame that must never go out, the heart fire of Rome. So as the city sleeps, it sleeps among its gods. Small flames burn in 10,000 household shrines, and at 1,000 crossroads, and in 100 temples, points of warmth and watchfulness scattered all through the dark, and the people sleep safe among them, companioned, guarded, never quite alone in the night. There is something deeply consoling in that picture. Whatever you yourself believe, the thought of a whole city sleeping, cradled among its gentle gods, with the small sacred flames burning faithfully through the dark hours to keep them safe until the dawn. Let that comfort settle over you now. You do not have to keep watch tonight. The flames are burning. The gods are keeping vigil. The whole soft web of the sacred is holding the sleeping city safe in the dark. And you can let go completely and sink down into rest, companioned and guarded and at peace, while the little lamps glow before the household shrines, and the eternal fire burns on in the Forum, and the great gods rest in their temples beneath the slowly turning stars. Let's visit one more of the great public places of Rome before the night grows too deep, one of the most famous structures the Romans ever raised, and one that is wonderfully peaceful when it stands empty in the dark. Let's go to the great amphitheater, the Colosseum, the vast oval arena that could hold tens of thousands of spectators, and which lies now silent and immense under the stars, a great hollow mountain of stone in the middle of the sleeping city. By day, when the games were held, this was the loudest and most crowded place in all of Rome. Imagine 50,000 people packed onto its stone seats, roaring, cheering, a sea of faces rising in great curving tiers toward the sky, the noise of them filling the huge bowl of the arena and spilling out over the city. The Romans loved their spectacles, and the emperors gave them freely great shows that could last for days. and the whole city would pour into the amphitheater to watch. It was a marvel of engineering, this building, with its 80 arched entrances that could fill and empty it with astonishing speed, its great awning that could be stretched overhead on ropes by sailors to shade the crowd from the sun, its underground chambers and lifts and passages beneath the arena floor. We do not need to dwell on what was done there, on the harder and crueler side of Roman entertainment, because tonight is for peace, and the arena is empty, and all of that is long over and long still. Let it rest in the past where it belongs. What concerns us now is only the building itself, the great quiet shell of it, standing empty in the moonlight, one of the most extraordinary things human beings have ever built, and on a silent night, one of the most strangely peaceful. Walk in through one of the dark arched entrances, along a stone passage, and out into the great open bowl of the arena, and stop and look around you and let the sheer size of it hold you. The tiers of empty seats rise up on every side, curving away into the dark, ring above ring, climbing toward the rim far overhead, where the topmost arches stand black against the star-strewn sky. The vast oval of the arena floor stretches out before you, empty and still, and over it all is the enormous silence of the empty amphitheater, a silence with a shape to it, a great round hollow quiet that you can almost feel against your skin. The moonlight pours down into the open bowl, washing the stone in silver, throwing the deep curved shadows of the tiers across the seats. A breath of wind moves around the great ring, sighing softly through the empty arches, and then is still. A night bird has made its home up in the high stonework, and you can hear it call once, the sound echoing strangely in the great hollow space, and then silence again. Grass and small plants grow in the cracks of the ancient stone, and their scent drifts on the cool air. And the whole immense structure simply stands there, patient and silent, holding the moonlight and the quiet, resting through the long night as it has rested through so many thousands of nights. There is a particular peace in great empty places at night, in a vast space built for crowds that stands silent and still. All that roar, all that passion, all that surging human noise that filled this place has drained completely away and left only the pure shape of the building, the bones of it, washed in moonlight, profoundly calm. It is a little like the feeling of a great hall after everyone has gone home, or an empty theater after the play, that soft, echoing, peaceful emptiness, full of the memory of life, but utterly at rest. Sit a while on the cool stone of the lowest tier, where the most important Romans once sat, and look out over the empty arena under the moon. The stars wheel slowly overhead, framed by the great black rim of the topmost arches. The night bird calls again, far up in the stonework. The wind breathes softly through the arches, and the great amphitheater holds you in its enormous gentle quiet, this mountain of stone that 50,000 voices once filled, now empty and silent and serene, resting under the stars. Everything that was loud has gone quiet. Everything that was crowded has emptied out. Everything that surged and roared has settled into stillness. And that is the way of all things, in the end, and the way of every night, the loud day draining slowly away into the soft, quiet dark, the crowds dispersing, the noise fading, the great spaces emptying and settling into peace. It happens to cities and to arenas and to the busy, crowded mind as well, all the roar and rush of the day slowly draining away, emptying out, settling at last into stillness, into silence, into rest. So let your own thoughts empty out now, like the great arena emptying after the games, all the noise and crowd of the day draining softly away into the dark, until there is only the quiet left, the vast and gentle quiet, washed in moonlight, deeply still. And in that quiet, rest. Let the great silent amphitheater hold you, calm and enormous and at peace, while the stars turn overhead, and the night bird calls softly far above, and the empty arena dreams under the moon. The night is growing deep now, deeper than before, and the city has grown very quiet. Let's simply wander a while through the dark and sleeping streets, slowly, with nowhere to go, and listen to the sounds of Rome in the small hours, the soft and scattered sounds of a great city deep asleep, because there are few things gentler to drift away on than the quiet breathing of a sleeping town. Earlier in the evening, the streets still had a little life in them, the late diners going home, the shops not yet all closed, the lamps glowing in many windows. But now, in the deep of the night, almost everyone has gone to bed, and the city has sunk into its truest quiet. The lamps in the windows are mostly out. The thermopolia have long since closed their counters. The streets are empty and dark, the great paving stones cool and silent beneath your feet, the tall buildings rising black on either side, here and there, a single small flame still burning at a crossroads shrine. So listen. In the deep quiet, every small sound stands out, soft and clear. Far off, the creak and rumble of a freight wagon moving slowly through some distant street, rising and fading, the patient night traffic of the city. Closer by, the endless trickle of a fountain pouring on in the dark as it pours all night, soft and steady and sweet. From a high window, the thin sound of a baby crying, and then a mother's low voice, and then quiet again. A dog barking somewhere across the rooftops, 2 or 3 times, and then silence. The soft scuff of a watchman's sandals on the stones, and the faint glow of his torch sliding along a distant wall, and then gone. And underneath it all, almost too soft to hear, the sound of the city breathing. A million people sleeping. The faint collective murmur of all those sleeping bodies, all those slow breaths, all those quiet dreams, rising from the dark buildings like a kind of warmth you can almost hear, the deep, low hum of a great city at rest. It is the most peaceful sound in the world, the sound of a place where everyone is safe in bed, where the day is done and the dark is kind, and the whole human crowd has let go at last and sunk down into sleep together. The Romans, remember, complained about the noise of their city, the famous din of the daytime streets. The poet who grumbled that you could not sleep in Rome was writing about the day, about the carts and the crowds and the shouting. But the night, the deep night, was different. In the small hours, even Rome fell quiet, and this is what it sounded like, this soft scattered hush, a fountain here, a far-off wagon there, a dog, a baby, a watchman's step, and underneath it all the great warm breathing silence of the sleeping city. The same Romans who cursed the daytime noise slept, in the end, in this gentle quiet, just as you are going to sleep now, in the soft dark, soothed by the small sounds of the night. Walk on slowly through the empty streets, in no hurry, drifting. Past a closed and shuttered shop, past a dark doorway, past a wall where the moonlight falls. Past a little square where a fountain murmurs to itself in the dark, the water falling and falling into its stone basin, glinting faintly. Past a crossroads shrine where a small flame burns, throwing its tiny circle of warm light, watching over the corner. The air is cool and still, and smells of stone and water, and the faint last threads of wood smoke. Above the dark rooftops, the strip of sky is deep and black and thick with stars. And everywhere, on every side, behind every dark wall and shuttered window, people are sleeping. The family crowded into the little room under the roof. The comfortable household on the lower floor. The baker dozing for an hour by his cooling oven. The merchant in his fine house, the soldier in his barracks, the senator on the Palatine, the slave on his pallet by the door. All of them sleeping, all of them let go of the day, all of them sunk down into the same deep dark, breathing slow, dreaming or not dreaming, resting through the long quiet hours until the dawn. There is such peace in it, such deep, simple human peace. The whole great striving city, with all its noise and ambition and endless restless effort, has laid itself down in the dark and gone to sleep, the way it does every night, the way every city does, the way you are doing now. The day with all its demands has let you go. There is nothing more required of you. There is nowhere you must be and nothing you must do. There is only the soft dark and the quiet streets and the murmur of the fountains and the great warm breathing hush of the sleeping city, holding you, soothing you, carrying you gently down. So let yourself sink the last of the way now, down into that deep quiet, down with the whole sleeping city, the fountains murmuring softly in the dark, the small flames burning at the corners, the watchmen moving slow and far away, the million sleepers breathing all around you in the warm and gentle dark. Let go of the day, let go of every thought. Let the soft hush of sleeping Rome gather you in and carry you down, slow and safe and easy, into sleep. And now we come to the deepest hour of all, the still point of the night, the quiet time long before dawn, when the whole world seems to pause and hold its breath. The wagons have stopped. The last late sounds have faded. Even the watchmen have grown still on their rounds. The city has sunk as deep into sleep as it will go, and over everything lies a silence so complete, so soft, so profound, that it feels almost like a presence, gathering the whole sleeping world in its gentle arms. You are drifting now through streets so quiet that you can hear your own slow breath. The lamps are nearly all gone out. Only here and there a single small flame still burns, at a shrine, in a temple, by the bed of someone keeping watch, tiny points of warmth in the great soft dark. The moon has moved across the sky and is sinking now toward the western hills, and its light has grown thin and silver and pale, throwing long faint shadows across the empty squares. The stars are at their brightest in this darkest hour, scattered thick and brilliant across the deep black sky, turning slowly, slowly, as they have turned through every night since the beginning of the world. The air is cool and clean and still, cooler than it has been all night, that deep coolness of the hours before dawn. It smells of stone and of water and of the green breath of the gardens and very faintly of the sea, carried up the river on some slow current of the night. Nothing moves. The fountains still murmur, soft and endless, but even they seem hushed now, gentler than before. A single late bird calls once far away and then is silent. And the great city lies utterly at rest, a million souls asleep in the dark, breathing slow and deep, dreaming their thousand dreams, held safe in the deepest quiet of the night. This is the hour when the body sleeps most deeply, when everything in us grows slow and soft and still. Your breath has slowed. Your body has grown heavy, wonderfully heavy, sinking down into the warmth of your bed, the way the city has sunk down into the warmth of the dark. There is no weight on you now, no task, no worry, nothing pulling at you. The day is gone, completely gone, fallen away behind you into the past, and the dawn is still far off, and there is nothing in between but this, the soft deep quiet, the gentle dark, the long sweet rest of the night. Far off, the old gods keep their vigil. The eternal flame still burns in the temple of Vesta, faithfully tended, the heart fire of Rome glowing on through the dark. The small lamps glow before the household shrines. The great temples stand silent on their hills, their gods at rest. The aqueducts pour their endless water through the dark countryside toward the city. The river slides on, broad and slow and black, down toward the distant sea. And the whole vast machinery of Rome, the water and the fire, the stone and the timber, the gods and the sleeping people, rests together in the deep still hour, waiting without impatience for the dawn. And the dawn will come. It always comes. Far off in the east, beyond the hills, beyond the sea, the long, slow turning of the world is carrying the light back toward Rome, though it is still hours away, still deep below the edge of the earth. In time, the sky will begin to pale very faintly in the east. The stars will begin to fade. The first birds will begin to stir and call in the gardens. The bakers will pull the first warm loaves from their ovens. And the great city will begin, slowly, gently to wake, and the lamps will be relit, and the shutters opened, and another Roman day will begin. But all of that is far away, hours away, and there is nothing you need to do about it, and nothing you need to wait for. The dawn will come on its own, in its own time, without any help from you. You can simply rest, so rest now. Let go of the last of it, the last small thought, the last faint thread of the waking day. Let your body sink all the way down into the warm, soft dark, heavy and loose, and utterly at peace. Let the deep quiet of the sleeping city hold you, the murmur of the distant fountains, the faint small flames burning at the corners, the million souls breathing slow all around you in the gentle dark. You are safe. There is nothing to do. There is nowhere to be. There is only the rest, and the quiet, and the soft deep dark, and the slow turning stars. The eternal flame burns on, the fountains murmur, the river slides toward the sea. The great old city of Rome sleeps deep and peaceful under the fading moon, as it slept on 1,000 nights, as it sleeps now in your quiet drifting mind. And you sleep with it, sinking down and down and down, soft and slow and safe and warm, into the deep, sweet, endless quiet of the Roman night. Sleep now, sleep deeply, sleep well. And let the long, kind night carry you gently all the way down, into rest, into stillness, into sleep.